We're back at Treasure Towne. This is a fun vendor mall. We're here to do appraisals, as you see in the sign behind me. Hello.
Hello. This is some vintage, not very old. I'm thinking maybe the 40s or 50s.
Oh,
jewelry.
Yes.
And I did have the earrings changed. They were clip.
They were clip, and you had them changed to a post.
I may have ruined the value.
Oh, I wouldn't say ruin the value. You could have them converted back to clips, so I'm not going to devalue them for the fact that they have been changed to posts. But it's really nice. You have a Perun here. Perun is anytime there's 3 or more pieces of jewelry in the set. This set would have originally also had a pin, potentially, if you bought it, but that would have been optional. And look how beautiful this is. And here's the stunning part. I'm going to hold this up so everybody back there can see. Okay, well, the clasp can easily be soldered. It costs about $10 or $15. Well, it doesn't have any markings on it, but
I couldn't find it.
But it's got lots of interesting stones, inverted stones, Rivoli stones, all these different shapes, all these colors. And that is because this is by a company called Diella and Lister, and they were known for this. Sometimes it had a paper tag, and when it had a paper tag, the paper tag was their trade name, which was Juliana. Juliana jewelry is hot, hot, hot now. This is very collectible, and especially this set with all these pieces and all these colors. Let's say that you had it converted back to clips and you spent the money, you know, maybe you put $30 into it to put it all back to original, get the clasp fixed. You're looking at probably a $750 set. When this was new, it was better at the time, but it probably cost under $10 for the set.
Oh my gosh.
It is a really beautiful set, and it is very special, and the colors are good, and it's just, this is what people want when they're looking for designer costume jewelry. This is just about one of the hottest ones there is.
This is my grandmother's, and she died in 1941. The story, we thought, but you know, was that she brought it with her from Italy.
Okay.
But that could be a story.
I hear a lot of stuff, oh, I think that it was brought over from Europe, and it's like, well, if it's their prized possession, yes, but on the other hand, think about traveling from Europe and you're an immigrant and
you're 13 years old.
Yeah.
Right, and what are you going to carry with you and how are you going to get it there? Well, she's various kinds of porcelain. They've done the shroud by actually dipping this. It would have actually been fabric, and then they dipped it in the porcelain and then formed it around. And they used to do that with the Dresden lace figures too. I'm going to very gently lift her and see if there's any mark of any sort on her.
There's
let's
one
see.
back here.
One in the back, okay,
Yeah.
and then on the bottom. Okay, she's got a longer screw. She is porcelain. She is European. And there is a mark on the back, yes, 50966. That is just a mold number. I'm inclined to think that this is amphora, and that it would be from actually Bohemia. It was very high quality. It's generally larger pieces, oftentimes scenes. I had a piece that was a hunting dog with a big long hairy tail, and every piece of the tail just sort of was individually done. She's got a very, very pretty face. The condition's really good on her. The only wear I see is a little at the base here, which to me is pretty inconsequential. She has an Italian look, but I do think that she was probably made in the amphora factories. The mark on it seems consistent with that as well. Probably from about right around 1900.
And her locket and her earrings, like that was, it was all the detail.
The locket and the earrings, the detail is really, really impressive on her. I would say value is a possibility for a maker would be Edward Stallmacher, which was a particular maker in the amphora factories. It seems like the quality of his wear and the nice busts like this that he did typically are selling for between $600 and $800. And so I would think that she might fetch as much as well. And if you were putting an insurance value on her, probably $1,000.
We've been wondering forever, so it's nice to know that we have that.
Well, this is great timing for this. Is it? Yes, it is. This is the very first issue of Sports Illustrated, which I'm sure you know because it says right on it, first issue, which is unusual. Usually they just come out and act like we've always been here. So this is pretty interesting, and this is August 16th of 1954, so it's the middle of baseball season. It's great because you actually have the page. This page got cut out a lot, and it's so fun to go right to it and see it there. Kids would get a hold of this and they'd cut it out because they were the same size as baseball cards. And that was, and you know, the old idea was it has the fold out with the baseball cards, and it's a triple gate fold. First of all, this has been reprinted and yours is obviously the original. And that makes a big difference. Because it's a sports-related collectible, to be worth the most money, if you sent this off to Beckett's or one of the grading companies, they would actually put this in a slab with a grading thing on the top, and then you can't open it, but the point is that then it's been professionally graded. This one looks like it's about a 7 on the scale, and the recent sale I see is for one that's about an 8.0 on the scale. Unslabbed, probably $150 to $175. In the slab, probably $250 to $300. Okay. Now I should ask how you got it.
I've had it for years. I have no idea.
That's wonderful.
No idea.
Oh, that's great you hung on to it. They say it was here in Spokane, but Washington State University, so the local campus here. It's got the advertisement for Rainier Beer on the back, so absolutely Northwest. But the fun part is that this cross-country meet was held here in 1974, so it has at the golf course, yes.
Downriver, I believe.
Did you attend this? Oh, very good.
That's how I got the signature that's inside.
Oh, let's take a look at the signature. Oh, there we go, Prefontaine. Yeah. That's great. Well, Steve Prefontaine, there was even a movie about him, and he, of course, was a really, really successful track star in the University of Oregon, and probably the most famous runner ever, and died unfortunately in a car crash when he was still very young and his peak of his prime, and that's why he's very, very famous now. So you've got a couple of good things about it. Obviously, his signature is the main event, but also the fact that it shows Expo 74. I would think that your value on this would be somewhere between $100 and $125 today. Did you meet him?
Yes.
Oh, that must have been interesting. What was he like?
Well, he just got finished with the race.
So he was tired and sweaty. Yeah, I hear he was a really interesting and very, you know, he lived his life fast on and off the track.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and it was that era, so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really interesting things. Oh, isn't that neat?
I don't know.
Well, let's take a look.
And this is, I think, one of the original Mickey Mouse spoons.
Oh, yes, it is. Well, let's start with Mickey Mouse. That is very cute. And you can tell that it is one of the original Mickey Mouse because it has him with the long snout. And Mickey with the long snout, and also this lettering. This is absolutely the first of the child spoons. It was put out in the early 30s. Mickey Mouse saved a whole lot of companies from going bankrupt in the Depression, and this was one of them. People just weren't buying anything, but Mickey Mouse was so popular that kids could persuade their parents to spend a few extra pennies on something. And so they made a lot of these, honestly. It's a really neat piece. They're not super valuable because they did make a whole bunch. If I had this in Florida, I do shows near Orlando, and that's where I sell all my Mickey Mouse stuff, and I would probably get about $12 to $15 for that.
Very nice. Thank you.
Now, this little piece you said was your father's?
My uncle.
Your
my
uncle.
Great uncle.
Great uncle. Okay, well, this is a really neat barometer, and it's interesting. It's got this very nice glass case on it, and it's got the rising indicator and the falling indication, and it tells you all the things that you're supposed to know about what that means so you can interpret it and you view it from the top. On the bottom, it's got some adjustment pieces, and that makes sense because, you know, these get out of adjustment a little bit. Also, if you're at a higher altitude, you have to change this. And this one was a company called Mova out of New York. This would be 1920s. And it's a very pretty piece. They seem to be selling for around 100 to 120 these days. Barometers are always popular anyway. People like things that do things, and they like things that are useful things, and they can justify having it around the house because it has a purpose. But it's because of the style and the age and the fact that it seems to be working.
Yes, Apparently.
I don't think they ever quit. They're just really, it's a very intelligent design. So
Well, thank you.
very nice. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. This is something. I'll tell you what, why don't I move this stuff down here? This is so beautiful. It'd just be nice for people to see. That table looks like it's fine. Wow. This thing is massive. How did you get this?
Well,
This again was the same mother-in-law,
Uh-huh.
and she had and her husband, they had a business in Fremont in Seattle,
Oh, okay.
next to the Doric Temple there.
Yes.
And the Doric Temple opened in 1920s there,
Mm-hmm.
and in the late 60s they were remodeling, and they sold 2 of these vases.
Oh,
The other
interesting.
one has a different pattern.
There's a base that goes
Yeah.
with this too. Well, these are really, really beautiful, and they're so big and they're in great condition. Yes, here's the base,
And she put a electrician's tape around
so
it
that it wouldn't scrape the
scratch as
paint.
much,
That
yeah.
was probably a pretty smart idea, actually. These are called oil jars, and they really are just giant vases, but they're based on the old amphora from ancient times that had oil in them or whatever, and so that's why they're called that. This one's all hand painted. It appears to be from Mexico, probably from.
I thought, but we go to Mexico all the time, spend a lot of time there. I have searched and not found.
And not found, yeah. Well, this is a little bit older style. This is, I believe, from the Tlaquepaque area. Probably the highest and best customer would be somebody buying these as a pair to set out in front of a very fancy house for their client. So probably some interior decorator would pay the most for these. And whereas a collector price might be $4.50 a piece, a decorator might put as much as $1,200 or $1,500. They're going to sell it to a very wealthy client to whom that's just sort of chump change, and isn't that a pretty vase? So I'm going to say probably $1,500 retail. I would insure them for about $2,000 for the pair. It's really an amazing piece, and the fact that you have a pair and the original stance and everything is just about unheard of. Okay, it came from your dad. And you're right to mention the bow, because sometimes bows can have value in and of themselves. Did he play this for fun, or did he actually go around and play with a band?
he himself didn't play it, but all of his kids played it, including me.
Oh, that's great. There was a period in the 19-teens and 20s in particular. I mean, fiddles and banjos and violins and stuff obviously date back farther, but there was a period where before amplified sound in music, you had to have something that was going to be loud and that everybody was going to hear. And these definitely fit the bill. It looks like it's been maintained very well. The condition is really good. Oftentimes you will see them marked Stradivarius, which guarantees that they're not Stradivarius, because Stradivarius never marked any of his violins. But this is a very nice German violin. It would have been made in Germany sometime around 1900 or 1910. And the bows can have value too. I think this is a little better quality bow that someone put with it. So at some point, whoever had this initially was a decent musician, at least. You know, it wasn't just a child student model, even though these often were sold for people to use to teach their kids, and it sounds like your family, a lot of the kids played. Value on this, maybe $400, $450, and it would be worth, if you ever were to sell, it would be worth having a professional music store look at the bow and just make sure there isn't something more to the bow. It looks like a commercially made one, but there were some that were actually handmade, and those can be really valuable. This one looks commercial to me because this piece is the same as the others I saw, but yours has just really been kept immaculately, and that makes a big difference. That is a Bacon, and that's a pretty decent banjo name. Martin is a good name. You know, they all sort of run in various levels of quality, but this one is pretty good overall. The Bacon Orchestra is the name of this particular banjo. Banjos were really important in bands of the early 1900s because it was usually the loudest instrument up there unless there was a piano, and so you could hear this all the way through, and that's why banjos are very popular and featured a lot in 1920s music particularly, and of course later with bluegrass and things. I would say this one probably dates to the 1920s. Yep, it sounds like it's a tenor. I would say, and you've got the key, which is really important too, right here. So that's a good thing to hold on to. I would say that the value on this one is probably in the $600 to $800 range. And for insurance purposes, you might insure for $1,000 to $1,200. Okay, Ringling Brothers combined shows. Okay, so this is an old circus poster with the lion. That's pretty dramatic. Notice that it's got it's a little blurry in here around the mane, and there's some marks here that don't seem like they make sense over the ear. That's because this is a 1960s reprint of a 1928 poster.
Okay.
And so because of that, the value is not high like it would be if it was the original. And you notice he even says 1928 down there with a stock number. That's because they're wanting to make sure they did other reprints of their posters as well, and they want to make sure you're ordering the right one if you're reordering. So the value on these isn't terribly high, especially for the condition, but they're neat looking. Probably about $15 or $20 each. If you have the original, you're probably looking at 4 figures. Where did this one come from?
My husband used to be a mail carrier down in Southern California. He saw this at a garage sale.
Ah, very good.
And he knew I liked lamps, so he bought it for me.
Oh, very nice. It's a double burner, a double wick, and that is a little bit more unusual. I'm going to go ahead and take the shade off gently. I need to read the end of the burner because that is usually where you find your maker information on these. Ah, okay, interesting. Yes, this one is English. I thought it might be. This one's a John Scott company. Again, I don't know that the individual companies make such a difference, but the fact that it's English rather than American is just interesting to know. I don't think it matters a lot in terms of value. The double wick is a good thing. It has a hand-painted satin glass shade that does appear to fit right and be the original, and we always look at that because sometimes these have been knocked down. It's nice that it has this peach blow aspect to it. This looks like it's screen painted. The question with these is, where are you selling? Here, where you have both an urban and a rural audience, is a good place to sell this type of thing. I can't sell them in Seattle for anything. I can't sell them in Florida for anything because they don't match the houses or the era, but this is the right place for this. And so that does affect how you price things sometimes. I'd price it somewhere right around $125, somewhere in that range. Oh, this is nice. How did you get this?
Bought it at a yard sale about 15 years ago.
Really?
$5.
$5, wow. Well, that is a great deal because it is a very pretty necklace, and it's interesting. It's got an old Paris antiques.
And they're still, as of about 10 years or 5 years ago when we checked, they're
still around in Garden Grove, California. How interesting. When I first opened it up, I thought it was going to be from Siam or Thailand, but it is definitely Japanese. It's done similarly to chokinware with the damascene, where they do the layers of design. And it's really nice because it has so many individual pieces. And did you say you paid $5 for it? Oh, that's wonderful. Well, it's a nice old piece. I think this is probably pre-war Japanese, meaning likely to be 1930s vintage. I think it's as old as that. It's either right before or right after the Second World War. It could be 1950s. But I think with this clasp, there's a good chance that it's a little older. The value on this, I would expect, as a nice piece of jewelry from that time, probably $65 to $85. How did you get this one?
Yard sale again.
Yard sale again, wow.
Remember how much I paid for it?
It's got a little card that tells us what it is, and I recognized it, so it makes sense to me. You think, well, is it a cigar cutter? But it's awfully big.
It was until we read this.
Until you read this, and this is correct. It is an egg slicer, and they said this one was from Interlaken, Switzerland, and I do believe that that's absolutely correct. And it's an older piece than it looks. I think it was such a novelty. It was probably brought back as a gift to somebody and then never used because it's just pristine. I mean, there's no evidence of use at all. But then again, how many people slice eggs, right? Like that, right, exactly. You know, it's a very specific thing, so it wouldn't necessarily sell fast, but when it's sold, I would expect, again, probably in a similar range to what I told you on the necklace, around $65 to $85 would be my expectation for that.
Thank you.
And oh, you're welcome, and what an interesting thing to see. And if you folks out there in YouTube land are having fun watching this, well, please click thumbs up to like this video, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe, because then you can be alerted of future videos and events like this that I do in various places. Well, how are you doing?
Good.
Good.
She's a vendor here.
Ah, very nice.
This was given to me not too awful long ago, and they got it in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
But I can't find it anywhere. I know it's, you know, as far as a maker.
Okay. It is American made.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, to tell you honestly, that it is the base, which is a really neat burl, is 1970s. I think originally it was just on a flat piece of wood, because this piece is from the 1950s. And there's a good chance it was made by the Gregorian Copper Company out of California. And then you notice that the bolts underneath have been drilled into here. So I think that they decided either the base that it was on wasn't good enough anymore, or they just thought it needed to look more naturalistic and they put it on the burl base. And I have to be honest, I think this is a good marriage. I actually think this really works. I like the way it looks. And it's interesting, we see the horse standing by itself a lot. Oftentimes there'll be a clock next to it. We don't usually see the cowboy seated on the horse. It's generally a single figure or a single figure with another piece next to it. So this one's a little harder to find.
It seems to me that she told me that they bought it in Montana.
In Montana. It's entirely possible. They were made in California, but they were sold all over the West. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I even see them in places, I see them in Florida in the wintertime, and they ended up down there too, because they were just absolutely a very 1950s way of decorating. If you liked Western, which a lot of people did in the 50s and 60s, then this was it. Usually when we see the figure by itself, the figure is worth about $30 or $35, but I really like this presentation, and I think that, you know, I think this is one time where they actually made it better than it was, and I think you're in the right area to sell this sort of thing. And so if I were pricing it for resale here, maybe between $50 and $65 range, because I think the person who buys this, they're going to be someone who collects, but they're not going to be a purist because a purist is going to say, well, I just want the horse, or I just want the horse with the clock.
The wood.
It's going to be, yeah, or I want the wood to do something else with it. It's going to be somebody who looks at this and says, wow, that's really cool the way it looks, and I don't care whether they put it together or not. It's just really good.
A lot of them have missing ones.
A lot of them have missing ones, and yours is all there. So tell me how you got this.
This was my husband's grandmother's.
It's really nicely done. And did they know anything about it or ever talk about it? Okay. Well, it is a much older than we usually see version of Shisham ware from India. Yeah, look at the detail and design. We see tables from elsewhere in the world that are similar to this. Morocco, for example, in that same period of time. But the reason I feel confident that this one is from India is because of the type of materials they've used for the center inlay. But it's much more substantial than the things that we see. A lot of things that sort of look like this that were imported here in the 1970s. This is much more substantial and obviously older.
And when husband's 65, and he remembers it as a little kid. So.
I'm looking to see, you know, how much was exposed to air and how dark it's gotten over the years. And I would say that this is probably, notice how it's dark on the outside and the wood on the inside is significantly lighter. And that gives you an idea that it's sat around for a while. This might be as old as 1920s or 30s. People like tables that collapse, are easy to move. Occasional furniture right now is much easier to sell than large furniture because they can always find a spot for something like this in a house. And a lot of people, younger and older, don't want big furniture that they have to haul around. If I had this in the store in Seattle where I sell, I saw this there, I would bet they would have it priced between $350 and $425. Mm-hmm. I'm imagining, since you brought one plate, that you might have more in this
Yes,
set.
Here's what we have.
And it says Red Wing 196. 196 is just the stock number. You might look at that and think, oh, it's from the 1960s and they left something off. Red Wing Tampico pattern came out in the 1950s and was popular through the 1960s, and then they quit making China in 1967. So, wow. Yes. So
we were told it was great grandma's, but it evidently wasn't, huh?
Oh, it's not that it might not have been. She just that might have been her modern era set of china. If she, how long was she around? Was she around in the 50s?
Yeah.
Yeah, she might just have liked it. A lot of people in the 1950s who had older patterns started buying the modern patterns because it was the modern era and they wanted something fun and different. So it still definitely could have been your great-grandmother's china. It's just that, we often think grandmother was born in 1900, so it must be from 1900. And it's like, well, grandma didn't get everything the day she was born. They kept shopping.
Okay, yeah.
So I think that this is, but it's 1950s. I know this pattern well because I have a little picture for sale at my mall space in Florida about this big.
Oh, wow.
And Red Wing made the most fun shapes. They did really fun, elongated patterns. If you decided you loved it and wanted to use it, you could collect a big, interesting set of it. The big plates probably $12 to $15 each. The smaller plates maybe $6 for the little ones, $8 to $10 for this size. Your teacups and saucers probably about $10 or $12 per set. But it's all hand painted and it's really very good quality. And yes, it is the same Red Wing that made the Crocs.
That's what I was wondering. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
And that's why it has the little wing.
Yeah.
Like the Crocs did on the back as the mark. Now, how did you get this one?
A friend, I took care of some people and a friend of mine, and they gave it to me and for taking care of them. And it looked cold painted, so I thought maybe it might be worth something, but I don't know.
It is worth a little bit. This actually is the Dutch Boy cookie jar. It has been cold painted. Some of this cold painting was done at the factory. I think a little of it was done by whoever bought this.
Oh, really?
Because I look at the way they painted the buttons, and they've kind of gone in a few layers here. And the only ones I've seen, they had the face painted and the brim and maybe this, but they didn't paint out all the buttons like this. So I think someone embellished it a little bit on their own.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, this is also by Red Wing.
You're kidding.
No, it just happens to be.
Oh my gosh.
They were really big on cookie jars. Shawnee made a lot in this time, but this one I recognize as the Red Wing. It has a little bit of a crack here, so be gentle with it when you're using it. Don't drop the lid on hard. Don't keep it next to the stove where it might get hot.
I put it in my china cabinet.
Oh, well, that's great. Cookie jars were more collectible about 25 or 30 years ago, and what happened is that when they got really collectible, people started making reproductions, and that kind of soured people on it.
That's what I was afraid this might have been.
Yeah, no, this one is definitely an original. There's no doubt about that. The value with the crack, probably $40 as it sets.
Really? I'll be darned.
So how all this really got started is that it was especially the 1983 period, right, leading up to the 1984 Olympics. We started seeing them make little pins that commemorated various events. They were trying to figure out how to keep the Olympic Games going because it was so expensive. Like, they had the 76 Olympics in Montreal and they lost $1 billion hosting it. And it started to be that people didn't want to host the Olympics because it was a money loser. And so in '84, when they came to the U.S., Peter Uberoth, who was the head of it, said, we are just going to do a whole lot of licensing of stuff. We're going to sell merchandise. We're going to license stuff to corporations. We're going to let them advertise all over. And because of that, they actually made money. And all of a sudden, everyone was like, oh, that's how we keep the Olympics going. And one of the things was these collector pins. Well, people would come from different parts of the world and they got all excited, and it's like, oh, I can put that on my hat and I'll trade you one, and oh, you have one from your country, and it just started to snowball, and pretty soon you see them for all sorts of different events. I mean, I see one here that looks like it's from maybe the Walla Walla Balloon Festival down in the corner there. This one's got one that's an Alaska statehood stamp that's also 1980s. The Hard Rock Cafe, I mean, they started doing them. It started to be the thing where everybody started to have these pins and trade them, and they became pretty collectible. Yours are nicely broken into sets, and selling them in sets, to me, especially because they're all in the Riker mount, is the way to go. Another venue here, which I went to and really enjoyed, I went to the one in Vancouver, and here's a bunch of Expo 86 pins, and I remember you could walk around, and some of the pavilions, you could buy them, and it was $1 or $2, and it was just sort of a fun thing to take home. They have proliferated to the point where there are just jillions of them. And so some of them are worth a bunch of money and some of them are not worth much at all. How did you get them and what did you pay for them?
My husband found them. I do not recall where he found them. But he bought them from a estate guy who was downsizing and getting rid of them.
Right.
I think you pay for the whole set of them like $150.
Oh.
I don't know.
That's pretty good. So if he paid $150 and I think I'm counting like...
There's a lot.
Sometimes they would sell them as frame sets because once they started to be collectible, then it was like, oh, well, just buy the whole set and then you have them all instead of having to go trading them around. And then others, they get assembled by type, and it looks like somebody spent a lot of time doing that. The Olympic ones are going to probably be the most valuable sets, and you might be able to get between $35 and $55 per set, and I would price those higher. The other ones, I would think, you know, you might be looking at $20, $25 a set. I would say like
sports ones.
The sports ones, yeah, because they're more common and there's more of them. And these ones that are just sort of random events, those are also not going to sell for as much. But, you know, if you just sort of looked at them and said, there's 15 or 20 pins, I'm going to charge $1 a piece, you would make a lot of money on these over time. And it is something that people still collect.
Just because hair jewelry
Oh, how fun to see this.
That common.
No.
And then both of them, you know, are made in a different way. And so it's like, and they're both in pretty good condition.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful. I really enjoy hair jewelry. Some people are kind of weirded out by the idea that, oh, this is actual human hair, which it is. And it's 100, well, I would say probably, gosh, maybe as old as 150 years now, some of this.
Yeah, I would guess so.
I would guess so, but they're beautiful, and I'm so glad you brought them. Now, this one is, I like this because it's been made into a fob, and the hair is woven into the jewelry. They would save hair for any number of reasons, but also as a remembrance. This is the winged Mercury there, just like on the Mercury dime. And this is just really neat. It's something different, and I noticed there is a price tag on here. It's about the price tag I would expect for a piece like this, which is $110. They can be higher if these attachments prove to be gold. That one is definitely brass because it has some tarnish. And then this one is neat because it's a locket that opens and it has little jewels in it. In addition to the remembrance with the hair of the person, you would have a little picture of the person. A lot of this became very popular in the right after the Civil War. Because of the Civil War, things related to mourning and remembering those who had passed became very fashionable. Although sometimes it was also a sweetheart thing, like the woman would do her hair and make a piece of jewelry for the man as a remembrance of her while he was traveling or that sort of thing. This one, because of the mine-cut diamond chips, is a little more valuable, and I see a tag on that at $150, and truthfully, if it were mine, that's the price I would put on it too. You just don't see a whole lot of this because it seems like it's mostly held in estates. One is blonde and one is dark. Blondes are going out of style because apparently they said that in 200 years there will be no more of us because everybody will have mixed in with all the people who have dark hair, and there won't be blondes anymore, natural ones anyway.
But white hair's still in.
Yeah, white hair is in no matter what. Thank you, that was fun.
So these were my grandmother's. They were on her formal
dining table as long as I can remember.
Oh, how cool.
Anyway, they're all the same, different colors.
Different colors, yes, exactly. I hate to trouble you two, but do you mind taking more out? Because I want to just make sure. I think what we're looking at, I know what this one is, and I just want to make sure they're all the same. Yeah, they look like little glass fishing floats. But if you notice the way that they're done at the ends here, they're different than that. I also was looking for the colors. Very good. Yeah, here's the color. This is the sea green. We've got a regular green color, and then this one is a chartreuse. And did she ever talk about these?
Yes, and not what they were, but she had a sister, and her husband bought a hotel in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
And when they fell on bad times, hard times, Grandma would give them money, and they would give them something from this hotel. I was curious about the age, the quality, what.
Well, they're 1950s, and they're good quality, and they are actually Blanco glass.
No.
They called them Blanco bubbles, and they were to look like little weights that you would find, you know, out at the Washington coast, the Japanese fishing floats. But they decided, well, if we make them in the different colors of glass we make, we can do a nice thing for people to use in centerpieces and things like that. So these are actually by Blanco, and you don't see them very often anymore, and people often do misstate and think that they're sea glass and that they're floats. So no, these are actually really pretty cool, and they sell for a little bit of money. In the clear, they sell for about $18 each. In the color, they sell for about $25 to $30 each. So you probably have $125 or $150 in little glass pieces just right there.
Aren't they beautiful?
They are really beautiful.
It was given to me by a neighbor who got it from her mother, and she was probably in her late 60s when she gave it to me.
Interesting.
And her mother had gotten it from a lady from the Navajo tribe.
Not pretty.
It's really pretty. It's a very interesting shawl. Even if she was Navajo and she happened to made it, I don't think that your customer is a Navajo customer because the pattern is very Western. Your customer for this is going to be somebody who loves vintage fashion and textiles, and they're buying it for that reason. And it's so interesting the way it's studded with all of these little beads. And it's got this nice gold trim on the edge. It is clearly handmade. This dull gold to me is something I would equate, and also the colors in the beading are something I would equate with maybe 1920s or 30s era. So I think, and also the shape of it. Now, the interesting thing is that most women didn't wear shawls by that time. That was more of a Victorian thing, and then people got coats. I'm just going to drape it just for fun so you can see how.
Looks fabulous.
Yeah, doesn't it? I have a friend who does vintage fashion, and she had a beaded gold shrug that was about the same size and about the same era as this, and I believe that she sold that for $145. So that's going to be my value approximation for you. It does have a few little holes. There's a few little imperfections, but that doesn't really bother me much because it's the uniqueness of this piece. I could see somebody hanging it as a wall and having it be wall art, or putting it as a runner or a drape on the front of a table or something like that, rather than actually wearing it, although it'd be fun to wear.
So you think probably the 1920s?
I think 1920s or 30s from the color and the materials that they use, and also this coloration with the gold. And it's nice because there is a signature on the back here, Artemis. Unless this happened to be the person's name, which is possible. They may have actually bought a French textile that had the trim and then set the beads themselves, and that's possible too. Wouldn't really affect the value, it's just sort of an interesting thing to note.
Okay. How would you store that? I've been keeping it in my cedar chest.
Cedar chest is great. Anything in your cedar chest, it's good to take it out about every 6 months and fold it in a different direction so it doesn't get permanent creases. And then you have these here, and these look like they're a couple of class rings.
They were my stepdad's family also.
Stepdad's family. I love the designs on these because these are very Art Deco, and this is going to be 30s or 40s. They may say, actually, if I
One
take
does
the
have a
look
date
here.
on it, and I
One
think
has a
it-
date.
yeah.
One's 1952. This is a Jostin ring, and it's marked 10K, and it has a bicolored metal finish here, kind of like Black Hills gold. Because it's 10K and because we can see the different colors in the gold and it's similar to Black Hills, I feel confident in this one being what it says it is. I will tell everybody a warning. I went to an estate sale 15 or 20 years ago, and they had two 14-karat marked Jostin, which is the one that gets into all the high schools, and they said 14-karat gold Jostin, and I bought them for, I think, I paid a little bit. I think I paid $50 a piece, and I took them to my gold guy, and he tested them and said they are absolutely not gold. They fake those marks, and they're selling them to people who don't know better because it's your class ring you're never going to check. So I tell people, don't buy new class rings from a big place like that. Buy it from your local jeweler. However, this is old enough, and it's 10 karat rather than 14. I don't think they were playing that game. Now, this one is marked 1933. Yes, this is the other one, and this one is also an E, so this must have been...
Same thing.
Yeah, next person in the generation. This one is probably sterling and brass, and there's an onyx in it. The onyx has lost a little bit of its edging. There's some chips. The reason this one isn't 10 karat gold is because this is the Depression, and people didn't spend the money on it. So this one is probably sterling that's not marked, and brass and onyx. So the 10 karat gold one is going to be more valuable because of the material, and that one will probably sell somewhere in about $125 range. The other one, honestly, probably under $50. Even though it's older, it's not always about age, it's about material and style and quality and all that stuff. Is this one that you or someone in the family used to use?
My granddad gave to me about 35 years ago.
Okay.
And he used to use it.
Well, like most camera bags, there's a number of different things in here because you bought the camera, then you bought other equipment as you went along, and you just kept adding to it for whatever it is you needed to do. So I'm going to take out the lens because each of these things is actually going to have a separate value. So this is going to be your light meter. Your little accessories typically don't sell for a lot now because in the day of digital, there are some people buying old cameras and shooting them and using them again. Most cameras are being collected just because I like to collect cameras and I want a bunch on the shelf. They don't necessarily buy all the little stuff. So the light meter here is probably an $8 or $10 item, and the duster is, maybe a $5 item, and little lenses and things that were very important. This one's a split image so that you can see the screen. They were very important to the people using them. They're not super important to collectors today. What they're mostly interested in are the old zoom lenses like this and the old cameras. And what you have is an Exacta rangefinder, and this is a 1950s camera by a company called Ihagi. You can see on the back there, and it says Dresden because these were made in Germany. The best cameras were made in Germany. They started making really good lenses in the 30s, and by the 50s, they were really, really well known for cameras, and they and Japan both started making really good cameras, and pretty soon Japan owned the market. It seems like most of the things that need to work seem to work. When you're buying an old camera, you want to make sure you turn everything and look through and make sure it's not getting light through it that it shouldn't. Originally, this would have had a small lens that came with it. He decided he wanted a zoom lens that could do all sorts of things. So at some point, and I would say probably in the 70s or 80s, he bought this zoom lens and put that with it instead. So the camera by itself, probably around $50 to $60. Probably cost that much back in the 50s, believe it or not.
Right.
And then the lens is a pretty decent lens. It looks to me like it is an Etna, and it's the auto zoom, and this is 35 to 135 millimeters, so that's a pretty decent extension. And this is likely to be worth about what the camera is worth. So overall, the whole package together, you're probably looking around $125, $135 for all the parts together. And the bag is cool too. The bag would sell for maybe $20 just because it's a cool bag.
Yeah.
And some people buy them just to use for other things. They don't really care that it was for a camera. We are at Treasure Towne in Post Falls, Idaho, and it is a wonderful vendor mall. I did a video from here last year, and I am with the owner, Gloria, and her lovely daughter, who I don't think I've been introduced to.
My name's Natalia.
Natalia, very nice to meet you. And it's so fun that you're having your anniversary. I'm so glad to be part of it. Thank you for letting me do appraisals. And tell me what's happening in the store. It sure looks a lot fuller than the last time I saw, because you were just getting started.
Yeah, so a year ago, we changed up our business model, went from kind of that flea market consignment feel to all vendors, and we doubled our vendor spaces, and now we have a little bit higher quality, cleaner, brighter, more inviting.
Oh, that's just great.
Yeah, so trying to, you know, just bring in the good stuff.
Yes, exactly. And how are the antiques and vintage doing? I know it's a mix of things here. There's other things, some artisan and craft things as well. But how are the antiques and vintage doing here?
They do very well.
Yeah.
They still do. Yeah, they've always been a good staple here.
Yeah.
But having the other stuff, we're right off of the exit, so we have travelers all the time. So having a little bit of something for everybody is really kind of our niche.
Exactly.
But yeah, people know the antiques are here. Vintage
Yes.
is here. So they definitely sell still very well.
Well, that is so fun. And yeah, you're in a great location right by a freeway off-ramp. I can't imagine better advertising than having your sign be right there where everybody driving by can see it.
Well, I will tell you, getting these videos with you has been helping immensely.
Oh, good. This is a fun place to go when you're traveling, you're on the road, and you're looking for something unique and different to do. And I think a lot of times people in their day-to-day travel, when they're going to local businesses, this doesn't factor into their mind. So they don't know until they're looking for a gift or someplace to take the visiting relatives, or they're a collector and they find out that it's here. So
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. We really appreciate you being here.
Oh,
It's been
thank
a lot
you.
of fun.
Nice to meet you.
This is my dad.
We're from Cincinnati.
Yeah, so am I originally. Well, or at least as a young adult, I worked there in the antique business.
This was my dad's, and it still works.
Oh, that's great. Boy, the question is, did he get this new or did he get it used? Because this dates back to about the mid-1930s.
He was born 21.
21. Okay, so it probably was his first radio, as I'm guessing. Nice tabletop, and it's great that it's got the wood case. It's especially great that it works. It's not that you can't redo these and put new capacitors and new tubes and everything in it, but we don't have very many people left now who know how to do that. So yeah,
You want to wait for 15 minutes for it to warm up.
Exactly. But once you wait, it does. I do think the older ones had a really nice bass reflex to them, and so the sound is different. Even AM sounded really good coming out of these old radios. I'm not seeing a maker name on this one. There might be enough of the label to tell. Oh, it's a GIllfillan. Okay. Yeah, GIllfillan was out of Los Angeles, so that makes sense. Yeah, so this was an LA radio company, 1930s. The prices on these have started to really go up. And this one actually, you know, it looks a little weathered, but you could polish this off easily and it would look just fine and shiny like new. Was that Al?
Just never to polish it. It's leave it alone.
You know what? It's absolutely fine the way it is. But you could polish it without damaging it if you use something like Howard's product or something that won't hurt it. Value-wise, probably around $75 these days. What are you going to buy yourself for your birthday here?
I have no idea. I like that radio.
I like that radio too. This is so neat. You know what? We have to show this because this is the third time it's come up. This is store stock here, but yeah, this is an old Air Chief radio and it's in really nice shape. I especially like it's got the tuning eye here that if you get it on station, it looks to me like it's a shortwave as well. Yeah, because I see this. Yeah, it's got the amateur broadcast and everything.
Yeah.
And it's priced at $149, which for a good shortwave radio, if it works honestly, it's kind of on the cheap side now. Well, it has been so fun bringing you these appraisal fairs and showing you the really cool stuff that exists in small towns in northern Idaho. You can find really interesting things anywhere you go, and small towns often are filled with stuff that hasn't seen the light of day for years. If you enjoyed this video, check out this one.
Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help, and we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.